first time I met Jack Cole, I was on the stage with 20th Century Fox auditioning for a man I was to learn and would become a legend, and the greatest choreographer I will ever work with in my entire 50 years of dance. But here I was doing things, dancing in a way I'd never danced before. I remember our first day of rehearsal. You do an hour and a half of class before you do any of the show dances. And that night, the next morning, I could not get out of bed. My muscles were so stripped, so strained, so stretched, so I was doing things that my body had never seen or done before.
What was the audition like?
Well, there were a number of great dancers. There was Mattox. Matt was famous, of course, for falling off during rehearsal. A set of stairs, platforms that went up from one to another like two ladders, and he was doing the rehearsal for the camera. And as all Jack Cole dancers do, everyone dances full out. You don't mark anything. Nobody marks anything. And he fell backward off this platform and landed on his back. Well, he's all right to this day because he's still teaching. But there was a saying at Fox that if the stuntmen wouldn't do a trick or something, just call a Jack Cole dancer. They could do anything. The one thing I remember that we did that was so stunning to me was to take a fall, that is to go to the floor in the count of one, like not, you roll over on your shoulder in your muscular thigh, 2, 3, and now you're comfortably on the floor, not so comfortably. But we had to fall down in 1. Well, Jack Cole is kind of short, and Jack could do everything. Jack Cole was probably the greatest, I have to say it, the greatest choreographer on earth at the time, in his way. Consider, there's the ballet and ballet choreographers, there's the jazz choreographers and the jazz, there's the Spanish, there's the tap, there's all this, but Jack did everything. With his Denishon background and his study with La Marie to do the authentic Indian dances, the Hindu dances, the East Indian dances, he learned these things to perfection. He did dances from more countries in this world than perhaps anybody, come to think of it. Now, he was Irish, born 1911. His father was a druggist. But he learned, he taught, he choreographed Irish, Spanish, of course East Indian, Harlem, Black, African, Colombian, Mexican, and even something from Eskimos. He did it, theatricalized it, of course. But Jack could do anything. It was hard sometimes for his dancers to follow. It was definitely not easy because Jack wanted you highly, highly trained before you even came to him. And his movements, well, he was most famous for the isolation, the thing with that one part of the body would move and any other part would stay still. He could isolate any tiny part of his body. Now, Bob Fosse picked up on a lot of that, or learned a lot of that, or taken it from whomever. But that was what was so great about Jack, and why he was the best choreographer that I ever worked with in my life. And I worked with a lot of good ones.
So tell me the name. What was the name of the film at 20th Century Fox you were auditioning for?
The film I auditioned for was Betty Grayble's last film, The Farmer Takes a Wife. I know she'd be kind of desultory about, she wouldn't want to come to rehearsal. She just kind of said she wanted to be taught in private away from all the other dancers, which was unusual.
So what was your experience? What was the style of dance you did in that film?
Well, the girls wore a lot of clothes. The boys usually wore less. Although I remember them in full blouses and things like that. I haven't seen that film in 50 years, so I couldn't tell you. But another film that I did for him was The I Don't Care Girl, which was in a lot of problems at the time. And then Fox decided to bring in Jack Cole to fix it up. So he put in several numbers. But Jack likes to integrate from the character, the story, into dance. You don't want to just act and then start dancing. It's why musicals kind of lost their favor, because that's an artificial kind of entertainment. But he would meld everything so that the characters would then become the dance. Gene Kelly understands that. Jack Cole did a magnificent show one time called Magdalena. It was Victor Lobo's music. It was a huge hit here in Los Angeles before it ever went to New York, and the critics, they didn't like the book. Critics don't like a book, the whole show goes down like a sinking ship, you know? Most unfortunate. The dances that he did in that were incredible. He had a dance called the Broken Pianolita, which is known to this day. No one can do it because it was so intricate. Each person was doing different things at the same time. He also had a dance in there where all the boys were trees and all the girls were birds. Now, fancy that. Can you imagine? I mean, just imagine that. Who's the great choreographer for Oklahoma?
Agnes DeMille.
Even Agnes DeMille, in a letter that sounded as if she wrote it on her knees, congratulated Jack on this performance of Magdalena. So everyone knew how phenomenal he was. And to be a Jack Cole dancer was the crown in your dancing life.
Was that the first time you had heard of him or saw his work? Did you see his work for the first time?
No, even though I grew up in Los Angeles, no. I met him on the set.
Okay, so after The Farmer Takes a Wife, then in the middle of all that, before you did The I Don't Care Girl, was it Ziegfeld Follies between the two?
Oh, no. I must have been 18 when I danced with Jack for the first time, and then I danced for Jack in New York in the first show I ever did there, which was Ziegfeld Follies. Now, mind you, my mother was a Ziegfeld girl, and my mother studied from Denishon, which these were his first teachers. So this was a show that cost the producers a lot of money, probably a bad book again, and closed the Forest Theater in Philadelphia. Great sadness because it had a tremendous cast. Tallulah Bankhead, not a singer, Davy Burns, Carol Haney, the great dancer, danced with Jack, Matt Mattox, but we only had 4 weeks of that show, and that too was an experience.
Did you have to audition for that?
I guess Jack remembered me. I went to the audition. He liked me from before. I never had any problem with Jack. Now, I understand some people will say, they mistreated him, but I think it was only the not-so-good dancers that were complaining. The really great dancers, like Gwen, always wanted more, asked for more challenges from him. Always.
So what was your role? Talk to me about your role in Ziegfeld Follies.
Oh, I didn't have a role in Ziegfeld Follies. I may have been Miss Ziegfeld, but then there were 2 Miss Americas just in the showgirl chorus. There were 16 dancers and 16 singers, and an incredible show. Brilliant talent, but again, the book. So I just did little parts here and there that Jack gave me. Oh, he allowed me to use my Spanish training, which he was also good in. as a dancer. He could do anything.
I want you to talk about that still shot from Ziegfeld Follies of you. You look like you're the center, the star of the whole set.
Oh, well, in the opening of the Ziegfeld Follies, which didn't go to Broadway, the curtain opens like this, and I'm standing on a platform in a shell of a pool. I suppose looking like Venus in the pool with these drapes that I was holding to either side of the wings. Well, anyone knows that when the lights come up and you're looking out into the dark audience, you know, all of a sudden you think, oh my God, I'm going to fall on my face. But nevertheless, you get used to it. So I guess I was given the position of being Miss Ziegfeld in that show.
Pretty excited.
Mm-hmm.
Did your mother see that?
Oh yes, oh my mother saw it indeed. Now Dorothy Kilgallen's husband, Richard Colmar, was one of the producers. Not known for his brilliance, but well, it's always sad when the show closes and you have all that talent just, you know, aching to be seen.
Now, I'll talk about taking acting class at the Actors Studio with Marilyn Monroe.
Oh, Marilyn Monroe. Well, there was Marilyn pre-JC and Marilyn after JC, which is Jack Cole. Now, Marilyn pre-JC was There's No Business Like Show Business. Marilyn was, I love Marilyn. Marilyn at that point was an imitation of Marilyn. Marilyn would be doing all these, like a fish in water, those kinds of excesses of femininity. By the time she got to Jack, and Jack choreographed her, Jack didn't make Marilyn dance. He just had her move. And when you'd see Gwen Verdon teaching Marilyn Monroe how to dance, it was like, oh, poor Marilyn, how will she ever do it? But of course, the camera comes in on that face, and then everyone's in love with her. But what Jack did, he taught Marilyn what you automatically picked up from him in his work, and that was isolation. So that when you saw a Jack Cole dancer, you saw this great stillness. Here, see. And then, from the neck on down, all hell broke loose. I mean, the most impetuous, sensuous, even violent, even exciting, even where he'd take these long runs on the floor, come up right in front of you. He'd keep audiences excited because he would be doing something enormously powerful, and then all of a sudden he'd stop. And you know, audiences would say, whoa, what's he going to do next, you know? He had this theatricality about him, this sense of music that he always, of course, did the sets. He did the lighting. That's why when Marilyn comes out in that luscious pink dress and those men have been introducing her and jumping their heads off, and up comes Marilyn. I mean, the whole thing is just, the man had incredible brain. He was our American Nijinsky. He was like a panther. He was the dancer's dancer. But speaking more about Marilyn, so he got her to move so that he was very patient with non-dancers and people who were willing and wanting, as Marilyn was. Marilyn was a perfectionist too. It's why it took her 33 takes, you know. And but he would teach every little move to Marilyn, and it was given to her. And so when you came in on those close-ups of this, you know, Jack just knew. He was brilliant.
So, but before the acting classes, you could see describe the change from when Marilyn first came in. She was...
No, I did describe it, because it's pre-JC and after JC. before and after Jack. The difference was there. She became finally that polished diamond that you saw and people loved, and the camera always got that frailty, that inner person, of course, with that lambent beauty, the body that just. She adored him. Jane Russell adored Jack so much because Jack loved Jane because she was a great jazz singer. She was a wonderful jazz singer. And audiences loved her. So he staged her numbers. He did so much in the supper clubs, which they were called then, in the 30s and 40s, when people went fully dressed. There's a story about when they were at the Rainbow Room and they were in their costumes. In order to go to the bathroom, they had to change out of their costume into full dress, because everybody else in the audience was, in order to go to the ladies' room, the men's room. There's also a wonderful story at Chez Paris. Well, the mobsters loved Jack Cole, because when people they brought in money. He was a huge success. He was, and they wanted everybody to pay it to watch Jack's performances. So if anyone was a little bit tipsy, not a little bit, but maybe way too much, there's a story of one of them taking a salt shaker and wrapping it in a napkin and bopping this guy over the head until he would be quiet or knocked out until the end of Jack's show. Oh dear, Gwen tells that story. But I wish Gwen were here. I loved Gwen. Gwen Verdon was the greatest show dancer I had ever seen. Gwen had a body. Now, believe me, we all go to the dressing room, and so you know who the great lookers in Hollywood, at least I do. Gorgeous body. Could do anything. No wonder Bobby Fosse fell in love with her and designed how many shows for her. Oh, those days.
And she was trained by Jack, right?
Well, Gwen Verdon's mother was a dance teacher of ballet, and she taught for someone else, and so she was already in the business. And Gwen Verdon's father was a gaffer at MGM. So, studios are where you lived. Well, to show you how well Jack worked with stars and how he could work, take a huge production but bring it right down to a very detailed object or idea in order to get across to the audience. There's the story that I've heard that Jack told Rita that when she took off the glove, she was to slide it off like a condom.
Folks were putting the blame on the lady known as Lou. That's the story that went around, but here's the real lowdown.
Well, yes, Rita Hayworth was my guiding angel when I was 11, 12 years old. And I even studied from her father, Jose, and Eduardo Cancino, then Jose, her uncle. So I was fascinated with Spanish dancing at the age of 15. And because it was Rita Hayworth, I got to do that. But then when Jack worked with Rita, and the fabulous Mattox in that dance that had no music, that was just done to the sound of Hitler's voice. Hello. I mean, modern dance, forget it. That was that was an impact. So he had a great impact on the stars, as he did on Marilyn. And of course, Mitzi Gaynor, little Mitzi Gerber, but Mitzi Gaynor just begged to have him to do another film with him.
Tell me again about Mark Platt. Describe that number.
The part that Mark Platt, when he danced, not to music on these platforms, but the sound of Hitler's voice.
Und hier hat man sich in uns nun endlich einen Bevollmächtigten zu schicken. Heil! 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 Hier um 2 volle Tage da gesessen habe gewartet, um mit der polnischen Regierung die Heil! Heil! Die Heil! Die Heil! 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 Die Heil! Heil! Heil!
You talked about class before rehearsals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about how he conducted a class, what it was like to be in his classes?
Gwen was always center front, was always the one on whom Jack demonstrated the movements. So we learned basically off of Gwen, because she was the best of the best. There was no one better than she, even all the time. Now, Jack adored Chita Rivera because she could move so fast. She was like lightning, and she could do anything, and she could assume any character and become all these marvelous parts. He worked beautifully with Chita. Any other names? Any other names?
That's fine, but you being in class with him, what did he ask of his dancers? How did he conduct the class?
One would have to talk about the hardships on the body, I believe, and the stories that have come out of that, and in particular the knee slice. That's very hard for someone who's almost 6 feet tall like me to do. Good for Jack, he's shorter, you know. But he did hurt his knee on one of the falls in Boston before the opening of a show. But he did knee slides till the end of his life. Even when he was teaching at UCLA, he was going to his knees and doing those incredible things that he does.
How did he inspire the class? By his presence, by his demands, by what he asked for?
You just knew that the perfectionism in which he saw things, you weren't allowed to go on until you got it perfectly. So that if a hand was here, it wasn't here, you know, or it wasn't here, it was here. There wasn't a misstep. There wasn't. You did it or you didn't. I'm glad he never picked on me.
And when you were rehearsing and when you finally got to the set, did you feel like you were totally trained, you knew exactly what was going to come out because you had had the time to rehearse, the time to get it right, you were comfortable in the performance?
Oh yes. Rehearsals with Jack Cole you would have been given the proper amount of time. Oh yes.
Did he talk to you about the dance, the
No.
piece he was working on?
No, I never had a friendly relationship with Jack. I was, I guess, too young, too scared, too unsure of myself to open my mouth. So I listened and heard things, and you felt an atmosphere, you see, that didn't need, there wasn't a lot of conversation. It was just, you just knew when it was okay.
Did you, did he open up to other people? He was obviously older and another level with his management staff and everything.
Mm.
Did you ever watch him open up with his peers, contemporaries, not his dancers as a part, but the staff?
No, open up in front of my eyes? No, I would never have seen that. Now, I know that he had a great reputation for ribaldry. He, maybe I won't tell that story, but he could use the words just as much as Lenny Bruce, but in my mind, I'm sure he used them really accurately, because he had a razor-like attention to detail and what things really were. You couldn't do anything fatuous in front of Jack. I mean, he had a rule for auditions that was printed in Dance Magazine of what you should and should not do. Mostly should not do. Like, you don't bring friends, you don't get gussy-wussy with the director, you don't overdo any motions. It's your port-de-bras is very, very important, not just your tour en l'air and landing on your knee, your pirouettes. He had to see that this attention was given to the smallest thing.
And as he was being trained with Denishan and all his other teachers, did he continue to work on his body while he was working as a choreographer? Did he continue to work as a dancer? And did you get to watch him refine his skills?
Jack continued to go back to classes. He continued to study and have his students study from Ravi Shankar, all the great teachers in flamenco, in everything, or in anything that he was studying. He had this vast library that he collected that was one of a kind.
And that's another thing that fascinates me, is his passion.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any, you were very young, but
Mm-hmm.
did you have any idea on what drove him and how he became such a perfectionist and such an authority in this whole area of bringing in Eastern dance and bringing in the jazz moves and bringing in isolations? Did you understand where it came from, or was it just a gift in his part? I'm trying to say, how did Jack come?
I know. You're asking for me to describe genius. That's easy. To describe Jack, he was self-conscious about his eye, and maybe part of that placidity that was in the face was part of that problem. Now, he didn't consider himself a good-looking fellow. Yes, makeup helped him on stage, give him a very severe and forceful appearance. He looked 6 feet tall. He acted 6.5 feet tall. He admired beautiful people. He was kind to them, the Marilyns of the world. David Gray, of course, who was his companion. And did you know that it was said that he was married and has a child and 2 grandsons, I believe. Now, he was on the road all the time, so as for his being a father, I think and the mother died in childbirth after that.
What was the talk on the street about Jack Cole? How did people refer to Jack? Oh, he's hard to work with. Oh yeah, Jack, you gotta get Jack.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta see him, his nightclub act. What was the word of mouth about Jack?
The word of mouth, well, if you were a Jack Cole dancer, you were something. Mm-hmm. Now you can dance for all the others. That was easy. Everything was easy after Jack. But Jack? My muscles hurt.
When he was working with the stars,
Mm-hmm.
there was such a transformation between what they were and what they were after Jack's.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen clips of Marilyn looking like a young Rita Hayworth, actually, trying to be, and then becoming Marilyn.
Mm-hmm.
And same with Betty Grable and Rita. How did he transform them? What did he do to make you cut the best of you and your own personality come out?
He had focus. He could see not just what appears, but what is, and what becomes. He understood the entire process. That's why he did everything, the lighting, the sets, the costumes, the movement, the influence of the music, having it integrated then into the play or the film. Jack saw it all. He saw everything.
Did he attend to the details of that whole picture?
Well, of course. Of course, of course, of course. I think if you look at some of the costumes and you see what they're saying and their effect that they're having to you as an audience, like for instance, he did a number, fabulous number, it was a 4-minute number, when sing, 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 that's the number. And I think that was the number where he was dressed in this zoot suit, you know, with the lapels and the whole thing, and the what did he have, a cigarette and some chains and the whole thing. And at the end of that number, the dancers, they were throwing up. It was so demanding, so exhausting, so exhilarating, so exciting, and best to the audience.
In humor, the humor he brought in, humor and the sensuality he brought into his choreography, for example, in Les Girls.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Gotta see that.
And the deal of bringing in the commentaries in the I Don't Care Girl, where Oscar Levant is saying, "Oh my dear, that girl just doesn't care." To bring all that, he took something that was so standard in a production of Eva Tanguay, and he turned it into something so modern, almost like what they've done with Moulin Rouge. He was so ahead of his time.
Which Moulin Rouge?
The one that Baz Luhrmann has
That one?
the new one. I know,
Okay.
but he had brought in that
Too many
whole-
fast cuts, right.
Too many sensitivities.
Yeah. Not enough from here. Okay,
right,
go ahead.
Right. But when he did such a complete 180-degree turn.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the actors wanted to work with him because he knew how to, again, you need a director who sees. Now, Jack wasn't very verbal, according to Alfred Drake, but Alfred Drake saved many a show, like Keane, which Cole did the choreography for, which was 1840s London, you know, lowbrow kind of stuff. Amazing. So you knew all the history. Yes, he moved and he didn't get credit for La Mancha. He had done that, and there was quite a big fight toward the end, at the end of his life, for having his heirs getting his credit for that. So, yeah.
In films, when he was on the set, did he demand many takes, or was it necessary for many takes because you were so well rehearsed? I'm sure Jack got what he wanted, because the cinematographer, forgive me, was only too happy to have his eye placed in the right place for the dancers, because you're shooting dancers now, and what angles, and so things were all choreographed from these overhead or wherever it was to tell a story on the screen with music and these crazy bunch of bloodhounds running around. And that was Jack's vision. And he also, you know, did the segues in and out of the sequences. His legacy, how did the things that he created, the work, he's known as the father of American jazz.
Yes, yes, yes.
And we know that.
Yes, yes, yes.
If you know
yes.
what you're doing, you know that.
Yes.
How did this spread out into our world, into our culture, through other choreographers, other dancers? How do we continue his legacy?
The legacy of Jack Cole for dancers today is that's what they're doing. They're doing Jack Cole, all those movements, you know, the isolation, which he did. He taught all these things, so it was picked up by everybody, some way or another. Because remember, he worked in all mediums: film, stage, supper clubs, nightclubs. He didn't do concerts, but there you got to pull in all this money and starve yourself, and you're lucky if you get travel. He wanted his dancers to eat. He wanted his dancers to work. His mind was vibrant. He could do anything, anywhere, at any time, and he nearly did.
Why is he not known as Fosse is known?
He is now.
Not yet. People don't know.
You'll do it.
Yet.
Come on.
No, why?
Because Fosse is, what, 25 years younger? You're talking about a contemporary. He just died.
Yeah, but Busby Berkeley, they know.
Oh, come on.
They
You don't
know.
put Busby Berkeley in the same category as Jack Cole.
I know, but they don't know.
Busby
about
Berkeley
all
was a visual kaleidoscope,
He was-
moving.
yes,
He just
was-
moved
he was a
bodies.
camera mover.
Yeah. mhm.
But I'm saying, but why do they not know Jack?
People that only the best of the best know about. You have to be a dancer's dancer to know about Jack Cole. You have to have been, in the that river, and you had to be a really good dancer.
Oh, that just hit my soul. So that's where I'm getting at. That
Oh,
depth.
oh.
That was so incredibly beautiful. Thank you.
Hmm.
Oh my gosh.
Hmm.
Well, I still have goosebumps.
I am so lucky as a dancer, as in anything, to have had the experience of Jack Cole.
I have to recover from that.
These aren't stories you tell, these are things you live and that are just in your cells. And yes, if somebody asks you 50 years later, your brain remembers the story, but it has to touch the body to remember it. And he did change dance, the whole body of dance. Because you see, he was the first one to take East Indian pure dance, authentic dance, and combine it what with? Jazz. All the syncopated movements, you see? That excited audiences, and that captured people, no matter where the environment was.
Where did he go with his energy? He was electric, actually. He had so much energy. How did he either contain it or let it out? He seemed in some places so held in, but there was so much energy.
Jack, in his teens and 20s, was a bad boy. He was the kid that makes fun of the teacher, and thinks he can do it better than she can. He can't, but he will. And he knows he can. See, so he developed that kind of, the little barbs and the sides. He was very soft-spoken,
The big Jack's energy, how did he contain it or give it away? That's what we were talking about.
Energy and Jack, focused like a diamond. You better be ready with what comes at you, too. His body, they used to say, was wound up tight like a what? That was it. It was just there, ready to spring, ready to frighten the dickens out of you, ready to do a step or a movement or move something that would really keep you awake. He was full of surprises.
So how has his legacy inspired other choreographers?
Jack's legacy, I think, can be seen in Le Cirque du Soleil. It's in everything that's dazzling, brilliant. You'll never forget it. It'll stay in your gut, in your memory, in your brain, in your cells, in your experience. You'll be talking about it for the next month. That's Jack Cole. Oh, yes. Oh, I can imagine how he probably impressed other choreographers.
How? With what?
Well, how can I ever live up to Jack Cole? I remember seeing the Nureyev, and I wept so hard. I knew I would never dance like that. You just know, when you see something, That's why when you hear the name Jack Cole, but it sounds more like this: Jack Cole. Oh, did you ever dance with Jack Cole? Oh, Jack Cole did that. I mean, it's known. Words are not needed.
When Jack walked in the room, what happened?
Things got quiet when Jack walked in the room, of course. And you got up and you worked for him and you did it full out. Every single time. You never marked anything.
How did you know to do that?
What? I was going to do something halfway? And you wanted to punish your body for him. You wanted to do things that you knew were going to not let you get up out of bed in the morning and the next morning. You wanted to find out what your own body could do.
How did he reward his dancers?
How did he reward?
When they did what he wanted, when you know you gave him what he wanted.
Jack didn't reward anybody. Jack is the reward. Dancing, his work, is what you came to have happen in your life. You would not be the same afterward.